Hi guys! So today I'm going to tell you how you can travel for super cheap and stay rent-free all over the world. Okay, so let's get straight into it. You don't need a lot of money to travel anymore. A lot of people's biggest concern is not having enough money to travel. But I'm going to tell you guys today how you actually don't need a lot of money to travel anymore. You can travel for super cheap. So what I'm going to talk about today is Worldpackers, which is a work exchange program. So basically what this means is volunteering a few hours a day in exchange for accommodation and food. This is how loads of people are traveling now, including myself, and it allows people to travel now without needing a lot of money. So basically Worldpackers is a website where you can look for jobs all over the world. There are loads of different jobs to choose from, including bartending, au pairing, working on a farm, housekeeping, party promoting, charity work, and social media / content creation. Now, I've done a bunch of these jobs, which I'm going to get into in a little bit. So usually you end up working about 10 to 25 hours a week, sometimes a bit more depending on the job. But when you're applying for the jobs, you can see how many hours a week they expect you to work. And then in return for working these hours, you get free accommodation and free food. So you usually get a room in a dorm, but sometimes you get private rooms, which I've had before. And let me tell you, that is so nice. So all you really need is money for whatever activities you want to do when you go to that country. But as far as food and accommodation, you don't need to worry about that, which is usually the biggest expense. So you basically just search for the country that you want to go to and look for what job opportunities they have there. So I'd say it's best to apply for as many jobs as you can that interest you, because you might need to apply for quite a few to get one. Because also sometimes there are tons of people applying for the same job if it sounds really good, or if it's like a really popular destination that everyone wants to go to. Now, I also think it's quite important to apply a few months in advance, at least 1 month. I have gotten jobs that I applied for just a few weeks before, but now I'm applying for jobs in Europe for summer and a lot of them are already full. So I think it's quite important to apply a few months in advance if there's a job that you really want. Okay, so I've done many of these volunteer jobs and I'm going to tell you about my experiences with them. So last year I did 4 volunteer jobs in different countries in Europe. The first one was bartending and serving breakfast in Italy in a hostel in Naples. So it was like 25 hours a week of work and I had to wake up quite early and I was pretty exhausted. Sometimes I had to work in the evening as well, so I'd go to bed late and then have to wake up early. This wasn't my favorite. I was also the only volunteer, which I didn't really like because I didn't have any other volunteers to work with. But the people were really nice who owned the hostel, and the people that worked there were also really nice. So I had a pretty good experience all in all, but I probably wouldn't do it again. I also felt like I didn't really have enough time to myself. Some volunteer jobs are like 10 hours a week, 15 hours, which are so much better because then you have a lot more free time to explore. But on the plus side, Italy is super expensive, so I saved a lot of money by staying in this hostel and working there, because hostels there could be like 40 euros a night, which is ridiculous. So I only did that for 2 weeks and then I traveled around Italy for the rest of the month. The second volunteer job I did was being a boat party promoter in Croatia. So I was supposed to stay there for a month and I only ended up staying for 2 weeks. That didn't really go as planned. I didn't really like the job. So basically the season was ending. It was really dead. So it was in Split, Croatia, and that's supposed to be like parties all the time. And it's supposed to be a real vibe, but unfortunately I went there right at the end of season and it was just pretty dead. I also didn't really click with the other volunteers, like they were quite a bit younger than me and just on a different wavelength. So unfortunately I didn't love it and I ended up leaving early. The season actually ended early, so they didn't even need me anymore. That job, yeah, I didn't really enjoy. But if you're like a huge party animal, then that job is definitely for you. I don't really love to party as much as I used to, so looking back, it probably wasn't the right job for me. So after that ended, I went to Montenegro and I got a job as a babysitter. So basically I was staying in a digital nomad co-working house, and the owner of the house needed me to babysit his son for a few hours a day. It was like 15 hours a week, and it was definitely the best volunteer position I had because I had so much time to myself. I had so much time to explore with the other volunteers and the people staying there because I only had to work like 2 or 3 hours a day. The child was a little bit difficult at first. I just wanted to leave. I was like, I can't do this. Like, he was a really difficult child, but it got a bit easier the longer I stayed there. And I ended up staying for 6 weeks because I loved it so much. We were staying in a village and there was just nature all around. There was so many beautiful spots to explore. And I made some really good friends staying there. And that was probably my favorite volunteer job so far. Another amazing thing was that It was off season. I went in October, so there were like no tourists there. It was so quiet. The weather was still really nice. We just explored loads of like hidden beaches, and we had most beaches to ourselves. There was like no one there, and the locals didn't really go to the beach at that time of year. So that was like a 10 out of 10 experience. I loved that. Although I'm not a big fan of au pairing and babysitting, and I've done it before as well, and I probably won't do it again. But for some people it really works. So then once that ended, I ended up going to Albania, and I got a social media position there, which is perfect for me because that's my job. That's usually the jobs that I look for, but they can be quite hard to find on Worldpackers, and a lot of people apply for them too. So I got a social media job making content for the hostel. It was basically a new hostel that had just opened, but they were going into winter, so they hadn't really opened the hostel, and it was just the volunteers staying there. So there were like 4 or 5 of us in total. And this hostel was still being renovated. It hadn't been finished. And it was an old school, like an old primary school. And this hostel was freezing, like freezing. I was wearing like my big jacket, my big winter jacket, like every day in the hostel because it was half open and it was freezing. So this wasn't the best experience. Luckily, the people were really nice, but I also had like no content to film because there were no guests staying there. So I was kind of like, what am I doing here? So that only lasted 2 weeks, luckily. I explored the area a little bit. It was a really nice area, but it was just the wrong time of year. It was really cold and it was raining a lot as well. But I think if I had gone in summer, it would have been a lot nicer. I would have been able to film a lot more content and really explore and enjoy myself. That was kind of my fault because I didn't really plan properly and I didn't think the weather was gonna get so cold already. But now I plan things a bit better because I don't want to end up in a situation like that again. So those are the 4 volunteer positions I did last year. And this year I'm gonna go traveling again in Europe, and I'm going to volunteer again. So I think doing work exchanges are honestly so perfect for slow travelers. Like if you want to stay longer in a place and really get to know it, which is how I travel. I like to stay in a place for at least a month usually and really get to know it like a local and not a tourist. You get to find out where all the best spots are and get like a proper local experience. You also make amazing friends because you spend a lot of time working together, whether it's like a few weeks or a few months. Whereas if you're just backpacking, you sometimes only meet people for a few days and then you have to move on or they move on. But that's what I love about doing these work exchanges is you make really good friends and you get to spend quite a bit of time together. You also won't spend a lot of money and you save a lot of money, which I love. Like I was working online last year and I hardly spent any of my money because my food was paid for and my accommodation was paid for. So we did fun activities here and there, but a lot of the stuff we did was actually free, like going to the beach and going hiking. So that's why it's such a cheap way to travel because you don't really spend a lot of money at all. Also, say there's a country you really want to go to, but you can't afford to go to, you can look for a volunteer position there, which will then make it affordable to actually go there. So in a few weeks, I'm going back to Europe and I'm starting my trip in Greece. I'm going to be volunteering at a cat sanctuary on an island in Greece, and I am so excited. This is something I've always wanted to do. I remember years ago, I saw a girl post a video about it, I think on TikTok, and she was volunteering at a cat sanctuary in Greece. And I was just like, I have to do that one day. Like that just looks like a dream. So I was looking for a position like this for a while, but I couldn't find one on Worldpackers. So I decided to register with Workaway as well, which is another platform very similar. They also offer volunteer positions, but they seem to do a lot more like farm jobs. So I saw the job on there and I was like, okay, I have to apply for this. Now, Worldpackers does have a lot of other positions very similar, working with animals, but they just didn't have the specific one that I wanted. And the fact that it was in Greece was also a plus because I've always wanted to go and I've never been to Greece. But I've seen loads of positions that are very similar on Worldpackers where you can work with dogs and also cats, I think, but in different places, and loads of other animals. So I'm very interested to see what this position is like with Workaway because I've never worked with them before, only Worldpackers. But so far, I really love working with Worldpackers. So another awesome thing is that when you're applying for a job, you can message previous volunteers who worked at that job and you can ask them how their experience was if you want to get like an honest opinion before you decide to apply. But honestly, I feel like work exchanges have been such a game changer in traveling for a lot of people because if you want to travel longer for a few months, let's say, you can save so much money by doing this. There are just also so many awesome opportunities on there that you might have never experienced. Like when I worked on the boat parties, I didn't really enjoy it, but it was still a really cool experience that I probably would have never done before if I hadn't seen it on Worldpackers. And I still got to explore part of Croatia, which was beautiful, without spending a lot of money. And I think it's just such a huge opportunity for people who want to travel and don't have a lot of money. Like, I live in South Africa and I know a lot of people here don't have a lot of money to travel, especially if you're going to like Europe. It's so difficult to save up to travel to go to Europe or anywhere else. But now it's possible because you really don't need a lot of money. You mainly need to focus on tickets for your flights and then a bit of extra money for emergencies or other activities you want to do. So I hope this has inspired you guys to travel if you haven't traveled before. And I hope it's given you a bit more confidence to travel if you're worried about money. So if you guys like this video, please subscribe and maybe leave a like or a comment if you want. I'm definitely going to be posting a lot of travel content and vlogs when I start traveling again in a few weeks. So stay tuned for that and I'll see you guys in the next video. Okay, bye.